Gaz. The day my boss fired me, he looked me straight in the eyes and smiled. Not an angry smile, not a nervous smile, a confident smile, the kind of smile a man wears when he believes he has already won. Gaz. I remember sitting across from him in his glass office, watching the city move behind his shoulders. Hundreds of people were walking down the streets below. Gaz. Completely unaware that my entire life had just changed. On the desk between us was a single white envelope. My name was written on it, Jonathan Reed. Gaz. I had worked for Reed & Carter Solutions for almost 9 years. I had started as a junior financial analyst when I was 24 years old. Back then, Gaz, I was just another young man trying to prove himself. I worked late, I came in early, I took every difficult project they gave me. And over the years, Gaz, I became one of the most important people in the company, at least, that's what I thought. I had helped build their financial systems. I had found errors that could have cost the company millions. Gaz. I had saved major clients when other managers had already given up on them. And when the company was struggling, I was one of the people who stayed. I believed loyalty meant something. Gaz. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was believing my boss, Richard Carter, was my friend. Jonathan, Richard said, leaning back in his chair. This isn't personal. I almost laughed. Gaz. People always say that when they are about to do something incredibly personal. I looked at the envelope. What's this? Richard folded his hands. Your termination notice. For a few seconds, Gaz, I didn't move. I thought I had heard him wrong. Termination? He nodded, effective immediately. I stared at him. Then I looked around his office, the photographs on the wall, the awards. Gaz. The expensive furniture, the framed newspaper articles celebrating the success of the company. I recognized several of those articles. I had written the financial reports behind them. Gaz. I had worked on the numbers. I had stayed awake until 3 in the morning preparing information that Richard later presented to investors, as if he had created it himself. But sitting there, Gaz, I suddenly realized something. The company had never been mine. The success had never been mine. I had simply been useful. And the moment I became inconvenient, I was disposable. Why? I finally asked. Richard sighed dramatically. We're restructuring. Yes, after 9 years, things change. I looked at him carefully. Did I do something wrong? No. Was my performance bad? Gaz. No. Did I lose a client? No. Then why am I being fired? Richard didn't answer immediately. And that silence told me more than his words ever could. I leaned forward. Who made the decision? Gaz. Richard smiled again. I did. That was when I knew. This wasn't about restructuring. It wasn't about performance. It wasn't about the company. It was about power. Gaz. And Richard Carter wanted to remind me that he had it. I picked up the envelope. My hands were surprisingly steady. 9 years, I said quietly. Richard shrugged. Business is business. I looked at him. Gaz. That's what you think? His expression changed slightly. What does that mean? I stood up. It means you should be careful about confusing business with loyalty. Richard laughed, actually laughed. Jonathan, don't make this dramatic. I stared at him. You just fired me after 9 years, and I'm giving you severance. How generous. His smile disappeared. Take the money. Move on. Move on. Those 2 words stayed in my head. I walked toward the door, then I stopped. I turned around. Richard. He looked up. Yes? One day you're going to regret this. His eyebrows lifted. Gaz, is that a threat? No. I shook my head. It's a prediction. For the first time that afternoon, Richard looked uncomfortable, but then his confidence returned. Good luck, Jonathan. I opened the door. Gaz, you're going to need it. I walked out, and just like that, after 9 years, I was unemployed. But what Richard didn't know was that his biggest mistake had not been firing me. Gaz, His biggest mistake was assuming that firing me meant I had nothing left, because I did. I had something he didn't know about. Something I had spent years building quietly. Something that would eventually bring me back to that same glass office. But next time, Richard wouldn't be sitting behind the desk. I would. I didn't tell anyone what happened when I left the building. I didn't call my family. I didn't call my friends. I didn't even call my younger brother, Michael, who had always been the first person I talked to when life became difficult. Instead, I walked to a small coffee shop. I sat in the corner and I stared at my phone. For 9 years, my phone had been my life. Wemos, financial reports, emergency calls, client meetings, problems, more problems. Every day someone needed something from me. And now, nothing. My phone was completely silent. I ordered a coffee. The woman behind the counter asked me if I wanted anything to eat. I said no, I wasn't hungry. I was angry, but anger wasn't the only thing I felt. There was something worse, humiliation. I had spent almost a decade believing I was valuable. And in less than 5 minutes, Richard Carter had made me feel like I had never mattered. I opened my laptop. I looked through my personal files. I wasn't looking for company information. I would never take anything that belonged to Reed and Carter. Instead, I opened a spreadsheet I had created years earlier. It was my personal financial plan. Savings, investments, emergency funds, long-term goals. I had always been careful with money. That was something Richard never understood about me. He thought I was just an employee. He didn't know I had been investing for years. He didn't know I had built a small portfolio of businesses. Nothing huge, nothing that would make headlines, but enough to give me choices. I looked at the numbers. I could survive for a long time. I didn't need a job immediately. I didn't need Richard's approval. And suddenly, a thought entered my mind. It was a crazy thought, a dangerous thought, a thought I almost pushed away immediately. What if I didn't find another job? What if I created my own? I closed the laptop. No, that was too ambitious, too risky. I was still angry. Angry people make bad decisions. So I went home. The next morning I woke up at 7. For the first time in 9 years, I didn't have to go to work. It felt strange, almost wrong. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table and watched the sunlight come through the window. My phone remained silent. Then, around 10 in the morning, it rang. It was Sarah, my former assistant. I answered. Hey, There was silence. Then she said, Jonathan, are you okay? I knew immediately she had heard. Yeah, are you sure? Sarah, I'm fine. Richard fired you? I didn't answer. She sighed. I can't believe he did it. Why? Because you know why. I waited. Sarah lowered her voice. He's replacing you. With who? David. My stomach tightened. David Miller. I knew exactly who she meant. David was Richard's nephew. He had joined the company 8 months earlier. He was 32. He had never managed a major account, never handled a serious financial crisis. Never built anything from the ground up. But he had something I didn't have, family connections. So, I said, that's the restructuring. Sarah was quiet. Apparently. I leaned back in my chair. Does everyone know? Not yet. Don't defend me. I'm not. Sarah. Jonathan, I'm serious. People are angry. People are always angry when someone gets fired. No. This is different. I didn't respond. Then Sarah said something that changed the entire direction of my life. There's a meeting tomorrow. What meeting? Richard is announcing David as your replacement. I laughed. Tomorrow? Yes. That's fast, too fast. I looked out the window. Sarah? Yeah? Did Richard say anything about me? Another silence. Then she said, he told people you weren't loyal anymore. I froze. What? He said you had become difficult. I almost couldn't believe it. Difficult. That's what I heard. After 9 years, I know. I stood up. Anything else, Jazz? He said you were demanding too much money. That was a lie. A complete lie. I had asked for a promotion 6 months earlier. Not even a huge raise, Jazz. Just a position that reflected the work I was already doing. Richard had promised to look into it. He never did. And now he was using that conversation to make me look greedy. I closed my eyes. Sarah, listen to me. Yes, don't fight with him. But don't, Jonathan. I mean it. I could hear the frustration in her voice. Why are you so calm? I thought about Richard's face, his smile, Jazz, his confidence, his words, take the money. Move on, I smiled, because I'm not going to waste my energy trying to prove Richard Carter wrong. Then what are you going to do, Jazz? I looked at the laptop on my table. I don't know yet. That wasn't entirely true, because the crazy thought from yesterday had returned. Only this time it was louder. What if I built something bigger, Jazz? What if I stopped trying to climb someone else's ladder? What if I built my own? But I wasn't ready to tell Sarah. Not yet. Just be careful, she said. About what, Richard? I frowned. What do you mean? He's not happy that you left quietly. I laughed. That's strange. He fired me, I know, then why would he care? Sarah's voice became quieter. Because you know too much, Jazz. My smile disappeared. What does that mean? I don't know. Sarah, I have to go. Wait. But she had already ended the call. I stared at my phone. You know too much. That sentence stayed with me. Jazz. I had worked in the company for 9 years. Of course I knew a lot. I knew the company's finances. I knew its major contracts. I knew which clients were profitable. I knew which ones were struggling. Jazz. I knew where the company was growing, and I knew where it was vulnerable. But there was something else, something Richard had never realized. During my final year at Reed & Carter, Jazz, I had noticed a pattern. The company was losing money, not because of poor sales, not because of bad employees, because of bad decisions. Richard had been making those decisions, Jazz, and I had spent months warning him. He didn't listen. He thought I was challenging him. Now I wondered, what if the company wasn't as strong as Richard wanted everyone to believe? Jazz. What if his confidence was just an act? That night, I opened my laptop. I started researching. I looked at public records, industry reports, competitors, market trends, and then I found something, Jazz. A small piece of information, something most people would ignore. But I didn't, because I knew Reed & Carter. I knew exactly what it meant. The company was in trouble, serious trouble, Jazz. And Richard had just fired the one person who knew how to fix it. Me, I sat back in my chair. For the first time since I had left the company, I smiled. Not because I was happy, Jazz. Not because I wanted revenge. But because I finally understood something. Richard had believed he was removing a problem. But he had actually removed the person holding the entire system together, Jazz. And if I was right, he had just made the biggest mistake of his life. The next morning I received 3 job offers. 3. One came from a major competitor. One came from a financial consulting firm, Jazz. And one came from a company I had never heard of. All 3 wanted me. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because I realized something. For 9 years, Jazz, I had been working toward becoming valuable enough that someone else would hire me. But now I wanted something different. I wanted to become valuable enough that I didn't need anyone to hire me. Jazz. That was when I called my brother. Michael answered on the second ring. Hey, what's up? Are you busy? Not really. I need your help. There was silence. Did something happen? I took a breath. Richard fired me. What? I got fired yesterday. Michael immediately became angry. That idiot Michael. No, seriously. After everything you did for that company, it's done. No, it isn't, Jazz. I smiled. That's exactly what I wanted to talk to you about. He became quiet. Okay, remember that small investment group we started? You mean the one you told me not to tell anyone about? Yes, Jazz. The one that owns pieces of 6 small businesses. Yes, why are we talking about it? I leaned back. Because I want to expand, Michael laughed. Expand? Yes. Jonathan, you just got fired. I know. You're supposed to be upset. I was yesterday. Yes. And today I'm thinking that's dangerous. I laughed. Listen, I told him about the research I had done, Jazz. I told him about Reed and Carter's financial problems. I told him about the loans, the declining contracts, the rising costs, and one major client that was considering leaving. Michael listened quietly. Jazz. When I finished, he asked one question. Are you thinking about buying them? I didn't answer. Jonathan, I don't know you're thinking about it. Maybe you're insane, probably, Jazz. That company is worth millions. I know. How would you buy it? I don't know. With what money? I don't know. Michael laughed. You've thought about this for less than 24 hours. Yes, Jazz. And you're already planning to buy the company that fired you. I smiled. Technically, I'm thinking about buying the company that Richard is about to destroy. Michael went silent. Jazz. Then he said something I would never forget. Maybe you don't want revenge. I frowned. What? Maybe you want control. I didn't answer because deep down, I knew he was right. Jazz. I didn't want to hurt Richard. I wanted to prove something. I wanted to prove that he had been wrong about me, that I wasn't disposable, that I wasn't difficult, that I wasn't a failure, Jazz. But there was another reason. I had spent 9 years building Reed and Carter, not legally, not officially, but emotionally. Every system I improved, every client I saved, every employee I trained, Jazz. Every late night, every weekend, I had helped build that company. And I couldn't stand the thought of watching it collapse because one man's ego was bigger than his ability to lead. Michael, I said. Jazz. I want to make an offer for the company. Yes. Jonathan, I'm serious. Do you know how much this will cost? Not yet. Do you know if Richard will even sell? No. Jazz. Then what exactly is your plan? I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen. I need information. About what? Everything. I spent the next 3 days researching. I contacted former industry analysts, Jazz. I spoke to investors. I studied the company's public filings. I analyzed its contracts, and slowly the picture became clear. Reed and Carter wasn't dying, not yet, but it was vulnerable, Jazz. And someone else had noticed. A private investment group called North Star Capital. They had been watching the company for months, and they were preparing to make an offer. I knew what that meant, Jazz. If North Star bought the company, they would cut costs. Employees would lose their jobs. Departments would disappear, Jazz. And the company I had spent 9 years helping build would become something completely different. I didn't want that, so I made a decision. I called an old friend. His name was Daniel Brooks, Jazz. Daniel was an investor. More importantly, he was one of the few people who understood how my mind worked. We met at a quiet restaurant. I told him everything. When I finished, he looked at me. You want to buy your old company? Yes. After they fired you? Yes, and you want to become the owner? That's the idea. Daniel stared at me, then he started laughing. What, Jazz? This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Is that a yes? No. I frowned. It's a maybe. What's the difference? The difference is that I need to know you're doing this for the right reason, Jazz. I leaned back. What reason would be wrong? Revenge. I didn't answer. Daniel pointed at me. That's exactly what I thought. I'm not trying to destroy Richard. Good. I want to save the company, Jazz. That's what you tell yourself. I looked at him, he continued. But if you buy it, Richard loses everything. He chose that, and you become his boss. I smiled slightly. That's not the goal, Jazz. Daniel laughed again. Jonathan, I have known you for 10 years. He leaned forward. Let's be honest. About what? You don't just want to own the company. I said nothing. Gaz. You want Richard Carter to sit in the same chair you sat in. I looked down at the table, and you want him to realize that firing you was the worst decision he ever made. I slowly looked up. Gaz. Daniel smiled. Am I wrong? I took a breath. No, that was the truth. I wanted that moment. But I also knew something else. If I was going to do this, I couldn't let revenge control me. Gaz. I needed to be smarter than Richard. I needed to be patient. I needed to build a plan. So I asked Daniel the question that would change everything. Can you help me buy it? Daniel didn't answer. Gaz. Not immediately. Then he said, I might know someone who can. Who? A private investor. What's his name? Daniel smiled. That's the interesting part. What? Gaz. He's already negotiating with Richard. My heart stopped. Who? Daniel leaned closer. North Star Capital. I stared at him. You're telling me the same company that's trying to buy Reed and Carter? Yes. Might help me buy Reed and Carter. Daniel smiled. Exactly. I didn't know it yet, but that conversation was the beginning of the end for Richard Carter. Gaz. Because while he was celebrating my firing, I was preparing to become his boss, and the first step was about to begin. 2 weeks after my firing, Richard Carter gave a speech to the entire company. Gaz. I wasn't there, but Sarah recorded it. She sent me the audio that night. I listened to it alone. Richard sounded confident. He talked about growth, leadership, the future. Gaz. Then he introduced David as the new head of finance. Everyone clapped, at least. That's what the recording sounded like. But Sarah later told me the truth. Only a few people were genuinely happy. Gaz. Most employees were confused. David had never earned their respect, and now he was sitting in the position I had held for years. Then Richard said something that made me pause. Gaz. We're entering a new chapter. A new chapter. I almost laughed, because I knew what was coming. 3 days later, North Star Capital made an offer. It was a serious offer, and Richard rejected it. Why? Gaz. Because he believed the company was worth more. He wasn't completely wrong, but he was missing something. The company wasn't worth more under his leadership. It was worth more under someone else's. Gaz. And I knew that someone. Daniel arranged the meeting. It was held in a private office downtown. There were 5 people in the room, 2 lawyers, 2 investors, and me. I sat at the end of the table. Gaz. The lead investor looked at me. Jonathan Reed. Yes, we've heard a lot about you. I hope it's good. He smiled. Mixed. I laughed. Fair enough. He opened a folder. Gaz. You're aware that Reed and Carter is considering multiple offers? Yes. You're aware that Richard Carter has rejected North Star's initial proposal? Yes. Gaz. You're aware that you were fired from the company? Very aware. The man smiled. Then why do you want to buy it? I looked at him. Because I know what it's worth. And what is it worth? Gaz. I gave him a number. He raised an eyebrow. That's significantly higher than our current valuation. Because your valuation is based on the company as it exists today. And yours? Gaz. Based on what it could become. He leaned back. Explain. I opened my laptop. For the next 2 hours I showed them everything. The problems, the opportunities, the contracts, the wasted resources. Gaz. The clients who were being ignored. The departments that were overfunded. And most importantly, the people. I knew which employees were essential. I knew which ones were being overlooked. Gaz. I knew which clients would stay if the company changed direction. When I finished, the room was silent. The investor looked at me. You really believe you can turn this company around? I know I can, surely. Why? Because I've already done it once. He stared at me. What's different this time? I closed my laptop. This time I won't have to ask Richard Carter for permission. Nobody spoke. Gaz. Then the investor smiled. You're angry? Yes. Does that concern me? It should. He looked surprised, I continued. Anger can make people reckless, but mine has made me focused. I leaned forward. Jazz. I don't want revenge. That was partly true. I want results. The meeting ended with one simple sentence. We'll consider your proposal. 3 days later they called. They were interested. Jazz. Very interested, but there was one problem. They wanted me to put money into the deal. A lot of money. I went home that night and stared at my accounts, my entire life savings, my investment. Jazz. Everything I had built, I could use almost all of it. But if the deal failed, I would lose nearly everything. Michael warned me. Daniel warned me. Even Sarah warned me. Jazz. But I had already made my decision. I called North Star. I'll do it, the investor asked. Are you sure? No, he laughed. At least you're honest. I've never been more certain about anything. Jazz. The next week we began negotiations, and that's when Richard made his first mistake. He underestimated me. He assumed North Star wanted to buy the company. Jazz. He didn't know North Star had changed its strategy. They weren't going to buy the company themselves. They were going to finance me. Richard had no idea. For weeks we worked quietly. Jazz. Contracts were prepared. Numbers were verified. Legal documents were reviewed. Every detail had to be perfect. One mistake could destroy everything. Then came the final negotiation. Jazz. Richard wanted more money. I agreed. He wanted guarantees. I agreed he wanted control over the transition. I agreed. Every time Richard asked for something, I said yes. Jazz. Because I knew something he didn't. He thought he was negotiating with North Star. He didn't realize he was negotiating with me. Finally, the final documents were prepared. There was only one thing left. Jazz. The signing. I sat in a conference room. My hands were on the table. Across from me was Richard Carter. He looked relaxed, confident. He didn't recognize me as the person behind the deal. Jazz. Because my name hadn't appeared in the early negotiations. North Star had handled everything. Richard looked at the final contract. I think we've reached a fair agreement. The lawyer nodded. Yes, Jazz. Richard picked up the pen, then he stopped. One question. Everyone looked at him. Who is the final buyer? The room became silent. The lawyer looked at me. Richard followed his gaze. His face changed, slowly, very slowly. His eyes widened. Jonathan? I smiled. Hello, Richard. He stood up. You, me. He looked at the lawyers, then at the investors, then back at me. This is a joke. No, you're buying Reed and Carter. That's correct. Richard's face turned pale. You can't. I smiled. Apparently I can. He looked furious. You were fired, I remember. You don't have the money. Actually, I do. Who is financing you? I looked at him. Does it matter? Richard slammed his hand on the table. This is insane. No. I leaned back. This is business. Jazz. The exact words he had used on me. Business is business. Richard stared at me, and for the first time since I had known him, he looked afraid, not angry, not confident. Afraid. I picked up my pen. Are you ready to sign? Richard didn't move. Jonathan, yes, you can't do this. I looked directly into his eyes. You fired me. He swallowed. And now I'm buying your company. I signed my name. Jazz. The room went silent. Then I pushed the contract across the table. Richard stared at my signature, and I said the words I had imagined for weeks. Welcome to the new Reed and Carter. Jazz. But Richard still had one question. What happens to me? I smiled. That's up to you. He stared at me, and then I added, because tomorrow morning. I paused. Jazz. You're going to find out what it feels like to work for someone you once thought was beneath you. Richard's face went completely still, and that's when I realized something. The revenge wasn't complete, Jazz. It had only just begun.